I want to be upfront about something before I get into this. I've been doing private investigation work for going on 11 years now, and the vast majority of what I do is genuinely boring. But in this particular case, something happened that had never happened before. The client was a woman named Sandra, in her late 30s, who came into my office on a Tuesday afternoon looking exhausted in that specific way people look when they haven't been sleeping well for a while. Believed her husband was cheating on her and she wanted documentation. She gave me his name, his workplace, his vehicle description, and his general weekly schedule as best she knew it. I told her my rate, she signed the paperwork, and I started the following Monday. Her husband, Paul, worked at a downtown engineering firm. According to Sandra, his routine was highly predictable. He arrived by 8 a.m. and left between 5 and 5:30 p.m. The only exceptions were Tuesdays, when he stayed out late for what he claimed were team dinners. It was those Tuesday evenings that made Sandra the most suspicious. The first Tuesday I sat outside his office in my car from around 4:30 and watched him leave at 5:20. He walked to a parking garage 2 blocks away, got into a black Audi, and drove to a restaurant about 15 minutes across town. He went inside, met 2 other men who looked like co-workers, had dinner, and was home by 8. Second Tuesday was the same as first. The third Tuesday is when things stopped being routine. Paul left work at his usual time and drove, but this time he didn't go to a restaurant. He drove out of downtown, got onto the highway, and headed north. I followed at a comfortable distance, 2 or 3 cars back. We drove for about 25 minutes until he exited into a residential area I wasn't familiar with. Older neighborhood, big trees and houses set back from the road. He wound through a few streets and eventually parked along the curb on a quiet block. I pulled over about half a block behind him and cut my headlights. He didn't get out right away. He just sat in the car. I took a few photos of the vehicle and the location and noted the time. It was 6:14. I settled in and waited. After maybe 10 minutes he got out of the car. He wasn't dressed for dinner. He had changed out of his work clothes at some point, which meant he had either changed in the car or stopped somewhere I hadn't seen, and he was wearing darker casual clothes. He walked up the sidewalk, not toward any of the houses, but along the tree line on the opposite side of the street. He was walking slowly and staying close to the trees. I photographed what I could from inside the car. He stopped in front of a house about 4 houses up from where he'd parked. It was a normal-looking single-story house. Lights on inside, curtains mostly drawn. He stood on the sidewalk in front of it for a while, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, just looking at it. Then he walked further up the block, crossed the street, and came back on the other side. He passed the house again from the other sidewalk this time, slower, and stopped again across from it. I had photographed all of this, but it wasn't what I had expected to be documenting. He eventually walked back to his car and sat in it again for another 20 minutes before driving away. I followed him home. He was in his driveway by 8:30. I didn't call Sandra that night. I wanted one more week before I drew any conclusions because what I had seen was unusual, but I couldn't tell yet what it was. The following Tuesday, he did the exact same thing. Same neighborhood, same street, parked in almost the same spot. This time I got out of my car too. I walked along the opposite side of the street about a block back and watched him from a distance. He stood in front of that house for longer this time, almost 10 minutes. At one point, someone moved past the curtain inside the house and I saw his posture shift. He leaned forward very slightly like he was focusing. Then the curtain was still again, and he eventually walked back to his car. I ran the address on the house that night. The name that came back was a woman, early 30s. I found no connection between them. I ran her name separately, and that's when I found it. About 18 months before this, she had filed a police report for stalking. The report named a man. The man was not Paul. The case had apparently been resolved at some point. I couldn't access the full details through what was available to me, but the report was there, and so was her name attached to it. I called Sandra the next day and told her what I had found. I told her I believed her husband was not having an affair, but that he was watching a woman's home on Tuesday evenings in a way that concerned me. I told her about the police report. She went completely silent on the phone for a long time. I told her I thought it needed to go to the police and that I could provide all of my documentation to support that. She agreed, but asked for a day to think about how she wanted to handle it. That day was a Thursday. Friday morning, I was in my office early going through my notes from the case when someone knocked on my office door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and my assistant doesn't come in until 9. It was just past 8. I called out and asked who it was. A man's voice said he was interested in hiring me for some investigative work. The door opened and Paul walked in. He looked completely calm. He sat down across from me before I even offered him a seat, and he said he had been referred by a mutual acquaintance. He said it in a way that made it obvious the mutual acquaintance wasn't real, that it was just a thing to say. He put his hands flat on the desk and looked at me and asked how my week had been. I kept my voice completely level and asked him what kind of work he was looking to have done. He said he had been dealing with a personal situation. He said sometimes it was useful to know who else might be paying attention to that situation. He held eye contact with me the whole time he said it. I told him I wasn't taking on new clients at the moment. He nodded slowly, like that was the answer he expected. He stood up, straightened his jacket, and thanked me for my time. He walked to the door and then stopped with his hand on the frame and turned back and said he hoped my current clients were keeping me busy. Then he left. I sat completely still for probably 2 full minutes after I heard the outer door close. I still don't know how he made me. I had been careful. I called the police that same morning and gave them everything. I never learned what happened after. What I do know is that the woman in that house had been through this before with someone else. That level of calm is what has stayed with me, not the anger I expected to find in someone confronted with the possibility of being caught, just complete control, like the whole thing was a game he had been playing for a long time and he wasn't even close to done playing it. I still think about the fact that he never seemed surprised to see me. About 3 years into doing personal investigator work, I got a call from a man named Gerald. He was in his 60s, retired, and he explained that he had a daughter in her mid-20s who had recently started dating someone, and he wanted a background check done on the guy. Gerald said his daughter didn't know he was doing this. He just wanted to know who the man really was. He said his daughter had a history of getting into relationships with the wrong people. I took the case. It was straightforward background work. The man's name was Derek. Gerald gave me a last name, an approximate age, late 30s, and the name of the company he claimed to work for. I started with the basics, employment verification. The company Derek said he worked for existed, but no one by that name had ever worked there. The address he had given Gerald's daughter when they first started talking didn't match any active lease or property record I could pull. The phone number he used was a virtual number, not a personal one. I ran the name Derek along with the last name Gerald had given me. Nothing came back in the state. I also ran the photo through a reverse image search and got nothing useful. But when I ran the phone number, it came up associated with a different name on a consumer complaint board. Someone had posted about being scammed by a man using that number about 2 years earlier. The post described a romance scam situation. The person who posted had sent money and then the man had disappeared. The name attached to that post was different from Derek. I ran the second name. That one had a record, not in this state but in a neighboring one. It was old, maybe 8 years, and it involved fraud charges that had resulted in a plea deal and probation. I put together what I had and called Gerald. I told him that his daughter's boyfriend appeared to be using a false identity and had prior fraud history. Gerald thanked me and asked me to keep going for 1 more week to build out as complete picture as possible. I gave him my email and we ended the call. That night around 9:30 I got an email to my work address. It was from an account I didn't recognize, just a random string of letters and numbers as the username. There was no body text, just a subject line that said 1 sentence. It said, "You should stop looking into things that aren't your business." I stared at it for a while. The next morning I ran the email address and got nothing useful. I tracked down another address tied to utility records and sat outside for a few hours. I parked down the street and watched the building. It was a low-rise apartment complex with outdoor walkways. I was there for a couple hours and didn't see anyone matching his description going in or out. I was about to pack up and leave when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered because I sometimes get calls from leads and sources who don't want to come up on caller ID. The voice on the other end was male, calm, and he said my full name. I didn't say anything. He said he knew I had been asking questions about someone close to him. He said that was a problem. He said he wanted to be reasonable about it, and that I should consider whether the money I was being paid was worth what came with continuing to pursue this. He said it all very slowly and very evenly, like someone who had rehearsed it or had done it before. I asked him who I was speaking to. He said that wasn't important, and that what was important was that I understood him clearly. Then he hung up. I sat in my car on that street outside that apartment building, and I felt something I genuinely do not feel often in this work. My heart rate had gone up, and I became suddenly very aware of where I was parked and how long I had been sitting there, and whether anyone had been watching me from inside that building while I was watching it. I pulled out and drove away. I called Gerald that evening and told him what had happened, both the email and the phone call. I told him I strongly recommended he go to law enforcement with what we already had, rather than continuing privately, and that I was willing to accompany him and provide everything I had documented. I also told him he should tell his daughter immediately, and that she should not be alone with Derek under any circumstances. Later I learned that he'd done this before in other states. By the time any of that moved through the system, I was long detached from it legally. I had submitted everything I had and stepped back. But I think about that phone call regularly, not because of what was said exactly, but because of how it was said. Even though I had been very careful, I still think about the way he said my full name. I had always thought I was the one watching. That was the first time I realized someone had already been watching back. About 5 years ago, I was contracted by a family to locate a missing family member. A young woman, 22, I'll call her Claire. She had last been in contact with her family about 3 weeks before they came to me. The last communication was a text to her mother saying she was fine and not to worry. That was it. No calls, no responses to messages after that, no activity on her social media. The family had reported it to police. Police did an initial check, but the case didn't go far. I started with what the family gave me. Last known address, which was a shared apartment in a mid-sized city about 2 hours from where her parents lived. The name of the restaurant she had been working at for about 8 months. The name of a friend she had been spending time with in the weeks before she went quiet, a girl named Becca. And the name of a man she had apparently been seeing for the few months prior to disappearing. Someone her family had never met but had heard mentioned. I'll call him Nathan. I went to her apartment first. She had 2 roommates. One of them, a girl named Jade, who was home when I knocked and agreed to talk to me. She said Claire had gradually started spending less and less time at the apartment over the 2 months before she stopped being in contact. Clothes started going missing from her closet a little at a time. Jade said she hadn't thought much of it at the time, because she assumed Claire was just spending more nights at Nathan's place. She said Nathan had come to the apartment twice that she could remember, and that he was polite, but that he gave her a feeling she couldn't name clearly. She thought about it, and said he was the kind of person who was almost too interested in other people's routines. She said both times he came over, he asked a lot of questions about the roommates' schedules, and who was usually home, and what time they came and went. She had chalked it up to just being socially awkward at the time. I went to the restaurant. Her manager told me Claire had stopped showing up for shifts about 4 weeks prior. She hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't given any notice. He said she just wasn't there one day and never came back. He said he had tried calling her twice, got voicemail, and eventually had to replace her. He said she had been a good employee and that it wasn't like her to just disappear. Becca was harder to get to. She didn't respond to my initial messages, and when I went to her address and knocked, she didn't come to the door even though I could hear movement inside. I left a card. She called me 2 days later, and she was immediately different from what I expected. She sounded scared. I asked her to meet me somewhere in public, and she agreed to a coffee place near her work. When she sat down across from me, the first thing she said was that she wanted to know who exactly I was working for, and she wanted to verify it before she said anything. I gave her the family's contact, and she verified it. Then she told me what she knew. She said Claire had started acting differently about 2 months into seeing Nathan. Claire became harder to reach. Then she said Nathan didn't like her spending time with other people. But then Claire had said something to her in person, maybe 6 or 7 weeks before she disappeared, that Becca hadn't been able to stop thinking about. Claire had said that Nathan didn't really like her spending time with other people. She said it quietly, kind of offhand, like she wasn't sure if it was a complaint or just an observation. Becca said she pushed a little, and Claire had backtracked immediately and said it was fine. It wasn't a big deal. He was just protective. She said the last time she had seen Claire in person was at Claire's apartment, about 10 days before the family's last contact. She said Claire looked tired and that she had seemed distracted the whole visit, kept checking her phone, seemed relieved when Becca eventually left. Becca said she felt at the time like Claire was waiting for her to go. I asked about Nathan. Becca said she had only met him twice, briefly. She gave me a physical description and the name of the neighborhood he had told Claire he lived in. That neighborhood was what I worked from next. I spent 2 days trying to build a profile on Nathan using the last name Claire had told her family. It was a common last name, and I went through every combination I could pull without getting anything that matched his description and age. No lease records in that neighborhood under his name. On the second night, I was sitting in my car in a parking lot going through everything I had documented when my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't have saved. It said, "She's not missing. Leave it alone." I texted back asking who I was talking to, but no response. I tried calling the number and it went straight to a generic voicemail that wasn't set up with any name. I ran the number the next morning. It came back to a prepaid carrier, no registered owner. I gave everything I had at that point to the family and strongly recommended they take it back to the police with the new information, specifically Becca's account and the text message. The mother did go back to the police, and this time the detective assigned to it took it more seriously. What happened after that, I know only partially. Claire was located roughly 5 weeks later. She was alive. The circumstances of where she was and how she got there, and what the situation with Nathan actually was, I was not told in detail. The mother called me and told me she had been found and that she was safe and that she was getting help. She thanked me and I told her I was genuinely glad. She didn't offer more than that and I didn't ask. What I can tell you is that the text I received in that parking lot is what I think about most when I think about this case. Whoever sent that message wasn't worried. I still have the screenshot of that message.